Tottenham find themselves with three excellent fullbacks at the club now, and I'm going to explore what their strengths and weaknesses are and when we should use each of them in different situations, what situations suit them best, what situations don't suit them best. So the first player I want to start with is Destiny Udogie because I think he was absolutely brilliant in our 2-2 draw against Brighton. I think he has been a massive miss since his injury, and that's partly because of how he's just a pure left footer. I think just having a left-footed fullback on that side is really opening up angles for us that are really important to get up the pitch and help us progress. But I also think there's some attributes that Udogie has that neither Porro or Spence have, and I'm going to explore those now. So there's a couple of things I think Udogie does really, really well. And one of those things I want to cover is how aggressive he is out of possession. And it allows us to really nip in at times with our counter pressing, where the team will try play out, and he's so good at reading these moments where they want to play into an area like this, and he steps in ahead of them, and he's so strong so he can hold off any challenge, and he gets us basically regaining possession really high up where we can be threatening again. So I think that's something that he's really good at, being aggressive and combative in the kind of counter press and the duelling high up. I think that's a massive part of his game. I also think his 1v1 defending is very, very good. A player who is as strong as Udogie is never going to be phased by these 1v1 duels. I think he's very good. His body position is always very good. If they try get any separation, he can often outmuscle them. We've seen him do that against even the top wingers because he's just so strong. The other thing I really like about Udogie is his ability to carry, because his ability to kind of travel over large distances and not tire is really, really excellent. So his carrying ability is strong, but he's also able to really get us up the pitch because he's got a great engine. I think we've seen that in terms of the demands that was put on him during the Ange era. He's such a good runner, and also really good at keeping the ball close to his feet, putting his body there to protect it when he receives. So let's say kind of he gets it off Van der Ven here. He might kind of shield it a little bit, and then he'll burst up the pitch, and his carries are excellent. But what I want to say about kind of comparing him and Spence, so we've had a lot of seeing Spence play on this left-hand side, and I think Van der Ven and Spence have had a bit of an issue in terms of progressing the ball. I think Van der Ven, his angles are quite one-dimensional, so he loves to receive the ball off Romero, and his first thought is always turn out and play out to his left. That's the pass he kind of has in his locker. Even if he's kind of receiving over here, he never really wants to play that pass. He wants to play either to the fullback or he wants to play to the left winger. Now, there's been a bit of an issue with this because Spence then, when he wants to receive it, is constantly wanting to come inside. And so these two, the dynamics just are a bit off because Van der Ven wants to play out here. And if you're doing that, then the whole reason why you kind of swing the ball from this side to there is so that you can utilize the space on the other side of the pitch. So Van der Ven plays over here quickly, but then Spence just comes back infield to where kind of the chaos already is, where you kind of want, if you are going to utilize that pass and you're going to switch play quickly, or not even quickly, but switch play, if you have someone like Udogie, he can get it on this left touchline, and because he's left-footed, he can charge up the pitch. And I think that's really, really, really important, especially because of the type of pass that the Van der Ven is. I think if you had someone like Romero on this side, it's not as much of an issue to have Spence here because Romero is not so limited to just that pass. Romero can play into here. He can play into here. He's more than comfortable. So it's not always just this and then back into trouble like that because there's different angles. So Romero can easily play into Bergvall, who then might set it to Spence, who can then kind of charge infield from there. Whereas when it's Van der Ven, it's kind of counterproductive because you're getting that pass, but then you're coming back in here, and it's a little bit kind of clunky. So I think that was refreshing to have Udogie there next to Van der Ven because I think it really helps Van der Ven with his playing out because of that pass. Like I said, he loves to play that pass. The other thing about Udogie is if we look at our kind of left winger profiles, let's ignore Odebear for a while. Just want to put Tell. I want to put even Richarlison might play at times. I want to put Kolo Muani. I want to put Brennan Johnson. If we look at all these 4 players, every single one of them is optimized by getting them closer to goal. They all want to kind of be in this area here. So you got someone like Richarlison who probably might can start out wide, but always will want to kind of be getting on the end of things. He's more of like a pressing forward from these wide areas. It's not really natural for him. Someone like Kolo Muani, who again I think can receive wide, probably the best out of these guys, but you probably want him to be able to drive in field. Simmons as well plays out left sometimes, has done so far. He obviously wants to operate in these central areas. Tell, you want him to kind of pick up the ball here and get shots off. And then Johnson, you kind of want to be able to make these out to him runs to get on the end of things at the back post or receive the ball in behind. So I think all of that tells me that you need a fullback who's going to provide width. Because if you have someone like Spence, because at the moment what Spence is doing is constantly driving in field, which is not his fault. That's the type of player he is. He's obviously right-footed. He can go up the line, but it's a little bit, again, clunky. I think it's so vital that we pair these wingers who all want to be in field, whoever it is out of all of these guys, with a player who's going to provide the width, to give them that luxury of being able to move centrally and play to their strengths pretty much. And Udogie is the best fit we've got for that. I think, like I said, Udogie's ability to overlap with that energy and that athleticism is really, really good. One thing I really think Udogie needs to work on is when he does kind of receive it in these areas, can he put good crosses into the box? Because at the moment you can tell he doesn't trust his crossing ability. And I don't think this is an uncoachable thing, and I've actually seen in some of the recent training clips that he has clearly been working on this individually with the coaching staff. So I think if you add that to his game, then his overlaps become even more threatening, and just from having that pure speed and athleticism and physicality, he can dominate that flank. And if you add then the crossing ability on top, then he's a real threat. And then it leaves defenders with this kind of conundrum, whether to follow one of our left wingers who might cut inside. Does the fullback track them, or do they track Udogie? Who's the bigger threat? And that just asks more and more questions of the opposition. So I think that's something we really want Udogie to work on. But overall, I really like Udogie there. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the squad, and I think he's going to go on to be a top fullback. Now I want to move on to Spence. Spence is the best 1v1 defender possibly in the Premier League at the moment. Any top winger is going to struggle to get their number on Spence, because he is so aggressive but also so focused in these duels. He's so desperate to come out on top of these duels. You can tell he's really a fan of defending. He enjoys it. He enjoys dominating his winger. And that's quite rare for the modern fullback, who often now want to be more offensive players. I think Spence loves it, and you can really see that when he plays. I trust him 1v1 against any winger, which is such a good tool to have, especially in big games against big lethal wingers. I think you want Spence on the pitch. Whichever side I think their top winger is in bigger games, you want Spence up against them. Whether that's the Mbappes in the Champions League, whether it's Kvaratskhelia, those kind of players, you're always going to want to have Spence on the pitch because he can deal with that. Where I also like Spence is in these kind of combination type moments where we're maybe under a lot of pressure, because as much as I was complaining about this kind of pass, it's not that Spence then gets it here and loses it, because he's so press resistant and able to cope with pressure. He's got really nice footwork, really strong, really confident as well to receive in tight situations and difficult situations. So I think Spence is really press resistant. So against a high press, I think Spence is a good player as long as we sort out the dynamics here. So you might need someone like Bergvall to drop in and help them progress, because like I said, this dynamic doesn't really work well. But if you can work out the kind of patterns to get us up the pitch on this left side, then someone like Spence is really useful because of how press resistant he is, whether that's with a more technical winger that Van de Ven can go more direct to. I think against Bournemouth, we had Johnson here. And so this pass was kind of a no-go. We played it a couple of times and Johnson just lost it. Whereas if you have someone like Udogie who can really control a difficult pass and really look after the ball, then that becomes more of an option. And then we get up the pitch and then you can have Spence here. I think what I also would like to see more from Spence, especially if Udogie is playing, is Udogie is able to keep the width and Spence can travel inside, because that's where I think he could get more kind of attacking returns. Previously, he's been paired with a lot of those wingers who I said like more central areas, and I think this isn't ideal for him. But one thing I've noticed with him as well is when he does get into this position, he's got a really nice outside of the foot cross where he bends it around there. Now, I want to touch on that in terms of his ball progression, because I think, like I said, his ball progression is a bit of an issue. Mainly because of his right-footedness, and he's playing on the wrong side. But what I really want to see from Spence, and I actually saw Harry Brooks talk about this on Twitter, who's a coaches 1v1 with lots of professionals. He's coached some top players, and he's a great mind and a great person as well. So go and follow him. But he was talking about the ability for Spence to play this ball with the outside of the foot down the line. Now, this is a game changer, because if Van de Ven, like I said, constantly wants to play that pass out to the left, if Van de Ven can play it to Spence here, and he's not set on bringing the ball in here, and he's able to have less angle bias and play down the line, then it's a game changer, because not only can he play to someone like Udogie on the line, but if he's out here, and you have someone like, let's say, Johnson, who wants to make that run in field, that outside of the boot ball is on, because it bends into the central area. So obviously that's quite a difficult pass, but say he's further up like here, then Johnson can be out here, he can bend it into Johnson's path and he can get on the end of it. So I think that's something that would really, really improve Spence. I think whether it's with the outside of the right foot or whether it's with his left foot, which probably is a more difficult thing. I think that's quite a difficult pass on your weaker foot. But if he can do that, then that's the same one. He needs to basically work on his ability to play down the line, because I think at the moment it's too predictable for him. It's not really his fault, but so be it. So that's Spence for me. And then finally, you've got Porro. Now, Porro, I have a love-hate relationship with Porro because he is so technical and he is so good, but he's also so frustrating because of how vertical he wants to be. Now, I think actually in Thomas Frank's system, this does kind of suit him. I think, first of all, I think Kudus and Porro have a really good relationship, and this is because Kudus can turn any of these kind of over-the-top balls into attacks, because Kudus makes 50-50s into 70-30s in his favour, because he's so quick, he's so strong, he looks after the ball so well, he's so technical. So I think Porro, because he always wants to play that direct pass down the channel, he's good at it. He's very, very good at it. He suits playing with Kudus really, really well. In pre-season, we saw a lot of Porro kind of playing this role. And I do think this suits him because of how much he wants to play that pass. And we've seen that Frank really wants to build up using the flank so far. He's kind of neglecting building up through these areas. So there's so much kind of responsibility on Porro to be a source of progression. And at times for me, I want to see him play more of these passes. So say he's here and Simmons is dropping in here. Can he play through the lines into central areas rather than constantly looking for this ball over the top or down the line? Because that just adds more unpredictability to our play. And if we constantly funnel the ball to our fullbacks and then just play long here, it's going to become predictable. Kudus is going to get doubled up on. He's probably already getting doubled up on because of how much a threat he is. So can Porro then start finding the 10? Can he find, let's say, Bergval's play on this side? Bergval might make a dart here. Can he find Bergval in the pocket there? So can he just add a bit more diversity to his passing? Because he's got the ability to do so. But I think he is sometimes a bit overeager to play the Hollywood pass in behind, like that pass that skips out the midfield. So sometimes he skips that out too quickly, and I want him to combine more. Can he play there, come get it short, play into Simmons? Can he, play it into Solanke's feet if he drops in there? Not always wanting to play that direct Hollywood pass, let's say. I think Porro defensively gets overhated. He's definitely not as good of a 1v1 defender as the other two. We've seen him struggle against Semenyo. He struggled a bit against Matoma as well. But these are top wingers. And I think what Porro provides on the ball outweighs what he might lack defensively. I think he's really important, especially we've got a lack of passes in the team. Porro has the passing ability. Whether he's using it to the maximum, I don't think he is yet, but I think he will. And I think Frank will really lean on him. I think that's why he's also played so many minutes, because Frank knows that he needs at least one of his fullbacks to be a passer, and Porro is that. So yeah, that's me with Porro. I'm really liking this Porro and Kudus dynamic. I understand why Frank isn't using him as a kind of more overlapping fullback, although I think in certain situations that could be a route in. I do think that Porro lacks the kind of 1v1 ability and the athleticism to be a proper overlapping fullback. So you kind of want Porro in these sort of spaces where he doesn't have to beat his fullback to put a cross in. You kind of get him in the half space and he just takes one touch out his feet and crosses it in. And that's sort of Trent Alexander-Arnold-ish. And I really think that suits Porro. People try to say Porro's a wing back. He's not a wing back for me. Wing backs need 1v1 ability for me more often than not, unless they're sort of a Dumfries type player who I think also has decent 1v1 ability because he's so athletic, but also he's more of a player who wants to get on the end of crosses and compete for duels, and that's not Porro. Just because you're technical, I don't think that's you being a wing back. So that's me on Porro. Now I kind of want to talk about what scenarios we would use the pairings in. Like I said, I think if Spence is going to play, I think it needs to be with Udogie. I think you really want someone who can keep the width so that they're not kind of on each other's toes and they're not cramping this space. Obviously, coaching exists. Spence could be coached into kind of being more comfortable holding the width. But I just think at the moment, someone like Udogie needs to be paired with Spence. I think Kolo Muani probably can do it as well because he's comfortable on the ball and he can receive it kind of anywhere and look after it. So I do think Kolo Muani and Spence could be a nice dynamic. But if you are going to play Johnson or Tell or Richarlison or Simmons there, who are so clearly players that you want more central in different ways, so you want Johnson in the box, you want Simmons in the pocket, then I really just think you want Udogie playing constantly. Because we need that width up and down. In terms of kind of opposition, I think in big games that I think Frank will want to lean into transitions. It's a toss-up because if you have a winger who's really, really threatening, and maybe a winger on both sides, then you probably want the 1v1 ability of Udogie and Spence. However, Porro is really good in helping us transition out, and he can break teams with one pass, like I said, especially if they're leaving space in behind. So that's a kind of toss-up that you have to make. I think a tired Porro is also a big issue. I think his game really drops when he's overplayed. So that's another issue you have to contend with. I think there are certain scenarios where we go full transition mode and go with more carriers. And I think a team full of Udogie, Spence, Simmons, Kudus can all carry, Bergvall can all carry the ball really well, and that could really help us in transitions as well. But I do think because of the diversity of what we want to do and we want to be able to have different ways of hurting teams, that is the reason I think Porro is quite pivotal to playing as many games as possible. Until we get a player on the left side who can do similar to what Porro can do on the right side, then we're a bit stuck, and I do think Porro becomes a bit of a no-brainer. So that kind of leaves Spence and Udogie fighting for this role. And then in games where I feel like we can afford to rest Porro, maybe against lesser opposition, maybe in games where we really want to lean on carrying and we kind of maybe have more passes on the pitch. So maybe a Bergvall and a, hard to say, I don't know, Sark can pass-ish. Then maybe you have more transitional dribbly kind of fullbacks and you allow more creativity from the centre. But it does a little bit concern me not having Porro in a team because of how important his passing ability is. So that's kind of the fullback situation in full. If you did enjoy the video, please do subscribe. Let me know kind of which fullbacks you prefer in which situations. like I said, I think Porro is not the best of the three, but I think he's the most important because of what he brings that others lack. But I think we've got three top fullbacks. And I think that's a really good place to be. I do think we need one more. I think we need another left back. Maybe the January window, maybe the summer window. But yeah, let me know what other content you want me to bring out. Please do follow us on TikTok, on Twitter as well, and make sure you're subscribed to get more of these videos. But for now, we look forward to Doncaster. Hopefully we see some of the academy boys. But all in all, come on you Spurs.